Okay guys, here we are, episode number, I can't even remember. Was that a tuner up there? I don't know. I cannot either confirm or deny. But we are finally getting to a spot where we can get the back on, the binding on, and get the thing set up enough to where we know that it will either make noise or it will not, and everything that I have done has been for naught. Let's get to the bench. All right, welcome back, guys. I have pulled the binding tape off of most of the areas except right where the curve, the waist is, and that's what my concern was. Remember, I put binding tape as well as a couple of pieces of this leather that I use for softeners and put them in here, so it actually gave about that much pressure with a clamp, more, you're going to learn sign language, guys, more than the tape alone would do. So let's take a look at what we have here. And then also, remember, I was concerned about up here. There was a little bit of back that was short of meeting the sides more than anywhere else. I am so glad that I actually used the sanding sealer and everything else on this, so I'm not pulling up what's left of the surface here, because I like this. It's so ugly that it's awesome, but all that French polishing and everything worked out for us. So let's take a close look here at the corner. There's nothing there. There's nothing sticking out there or there. So that all came out really nice. There's no gap. There's no acetone work to do by melting things. Now up here is where I'm going to be most concerned with what I find. Let me move this stuff back. Ooh, that's the hottest chick flick teal fabric I ever saw. And I don't mean the opposite of cold, son. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, these yoga things or whatever they are awesome. So this was here sticking up, and it reminded me that there might be a gap there, and there was one here as well. Do you see there? Let's have a look. Yes, there is a slight gap there, right there. It's very small. You see it? So I am going to get into my wood pile. Might be something as insignificant as a coffee stirring stick, and I will just figure out where that is. And these bend nice, so I'll make a mark there by breaking it, and then all I want to do is just take some sandpaper or anything and get that down in there so it takes up that slack, that little gap, and then when I start scraping binding, I can get all of that done in the same shot. Right, one little piece there, and then we've got one more. It's nice if they're kind of like this, if they got pointed ends, and then when you come into the one you just put in that's thin there, you can just guide that in and put the other pointed end down here. Now, that took what appeared to be forever, but if you look at it, there is literally nothing in there that shows as a gap. So I'm pretty happy with all of that. Now you won't see me do this very often, but this is medium Zap-A-Gap, and I'm going to go in right where I just did those little sliver repairs, and I'm just going to touch a tad of this on there and let it run in there. And this stuff will dry up in about 60 seconds, so you don't mess with it or do anything with it. Always seal it back up. And don't put this where it's going to be 10 degrees one day and 110 the next day. Okay? Okay, now later on, I've got some cracks here that just would not give up the ghost, and they're filled and they're stabilized. And I think that what I can do, since this is such a terrible guitar, I can take some of my coffee stirring stick here and cut a few more of these little pieces. And then, if you look here, once I get everything carved down right, getting a little bit of patience, and I can just feed those into there like that, get them right, pop them down, and then I can come along and either color them or not. But I do want to stabilize these cracks, and I'm pretty happy with it. Okay, you see there? There we go. Again, I would just glue that in there and take it all the way up to where it needs to be. If you have to overlap them, again, make sure that you've got one edge that's thin like this, and then I can just come in alongside of that one like so. Don't want to get into too much of that. We're going to make this guitar too nice, right? While I'm here, this is my favorite binding scraping tool. It's made out of a piece of binding strap like you would find on a 60-inch box tree in a nursery, or just anything. This is the stuff that flops along off of trains, so when you're walking along the railroad track, this stuff flops around in the wind and hits you. You don't want that. But what's nice is I can determine by holding my finger and thumb how much of this I want sticking out. So I'm pulling this down. Now, I don't want to tilt like this. I want to keep it up like this, so my binding is nice and straight and has kind of a 90 rather than the sloping curved thing. So if you have a really nice guitar and you want to protect the finish, well, sometimes using tape does just the opposite of that. Remember, we used our by the way, it doesn't hurt to fold this end over so you got something to grab up on. Anyway, I can put a piece of wider tape, so when I'm coming along, I can just sit down into this and watch what happens. See that? Sometimes you should keep some of that because sometimes you should keep some of this in a bottle because you can put some acetone in it and you can come up with kind of a filler paste that will work when you need it to. So I'm going to keep doing that right in here till I get to the blue tape part, and that tells me that I'm the thickness of the blue tape off the top of the guitar surface. See that? Now, ultimately what I want to do is I want to get the work area where I can just do long sweeping streaks with the right pressure, and then I'm just going to come along the side like this and take a little bit off. But I am going to tape this thing off. Now, do you see that right there? If you see this right here, that last pass just nicked that tape, didn't nick the top of the guitar. And if you look at it, it's even with the tops. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put some of this blue tape. Always keep your brush around to keep everything, and make sure the bristles on it are soft, or you can use a paint brush, a chip brush, or something like that. But keep this stuff nice. Another little trick, if you don't want to play around and cut everything, you can just loosely put it on here and then do this and score it with your fingernail like that. You see that? And then I can just tear it off. Alright, everything is ready. Oh, I have to show you this Parachin guitar maker's knife. They make the whole guitar with this, believe it or not. But it works pretty good. Again, take the edge that you want there and just come around and get long runs if you can until that tape starts to show up there. You want it to be smooth. Remember, wherever you stop the run, it is going to create an oddity in the surface. And I don't want to be repairing this with acetone anyway. Okay guys, a little last trick I want to show you here. Because there is this tape here, there's always going to be that little last section of binding that's going to want to be too big for the top, that's laid over this tape. You see that right here? So whenever I feel something jumping, like bumpy, and I'm using one of my knives and I feel it, I'm going to stop before I get to where that last thread right there. You see it? You see that right there? That is no man's land. So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure before I get that down to where it's smooth, I am going to take a piece of other equipment here, and if I feel the edge, which I feel right there, I'm just going to go over it really lightly with a file, and then I'm going to take my sandpaper and go like so and smooth it all out while that tape is still there. And you will see then that piece of binding that's left will come off when I take this and just cut along like that. It will pop right off. Bingo. And then one more time I'm going to go along with this paper here. And if there's any left, and I just push it back like this, I can take my knife. You see it sticking up there? There we go. And then we just give it one last pull. You can feel that. And then I always like to end with that. Of course, now I'll look at it forever, and I'll be going down the side to make sure that's nice and smooth and there's nothing laid over there. This is one of them places where when you use polish, the stuff hangs up here. Try black polish and you'll find out that it doesn't give that dandruff look on fine guitars like this one right here. Alright, now that we got the binding on, there's a couple other things we need to address. Like right here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a crack right there, and there's another one right there. So we could just slop some glue on there and call it a day, but for some reason I don't think that that's going to be enough. So we got these old tuners on here, and when they were, let me see if I can make that a little bit better for you there where we can see what's going on. These old tuners here are the original tuners. They're nothing to write home about. They're all loose, and they were locked up. So I put some mineral oil on them, or some Marvel Mystery Oil 1, and now I'm going to take them off, and I think that I am going to use a set of these, which are actually Gretsch tuners that are built, for the wooden body resonator. They call it the box car or something like that. So they tend to go with what this looks like, as long as they'll fit them holes and everything is fine. And I also have the set of inserts that goes with them to make, I think they call those escutcheons. Now what I want to tell you is we need to have a magnet out, so I got one of those, okay? And when we're taking these flat-headed screws out, you want to make sure you got something that's going to go all the way down, especially when stuff's gummed up. And so this is a nice set of any type of a screw you could use on a guitar. It's even got chasers for threads and stuff, and I think you know the name, but I'm happy I bought this. And the only thing you got to do is make sure you put all your stuff back in there, and there's enough room in there for this little, you know what this is for? Yeah, it's for taking the chin rest off a violin. Don't ask about that, just wait until you see it. Anyway, you want the right blade size for working this stuff. So I've taken these loose already and had a good time doing that, but as they come out, I'm going to make sure that they end up on this magnet, and then we're going to put this rack of tuners away, wrap it up in some paper towel, and put a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil on it, and then somebody will come along, they'll want these, and they'll do their magic. But this is going to go out to somebody, and they're going to want to use it, and they're not going to want the tuners that are not going to be reliable. So those Gretsch tuners are going to work out great. I've dealt with a couple of those boxcar instruments that I'm talking about. In fact, I'm looking at one over there right now, and I find that when people start messing around taking the cover plate and the cone out, they strip out the threads. Yeah, these are pretty loose, but whatever. We'll put those in a bag, and someone will like them. And now, yeah, that's pretty bad. So I could just squirt some glue in there, and don't tell me you haven't been able to see this the whole time. I could just squirt some glue in there and then clamp it and hope everything is okay. But that is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something completely different that I think you are going to think is awesome as soon as I know that these are going to work out. Yeah, there's going to be plenty of room there. Perfect. Okay guys, it is story time. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this headstock and I'm going to drill a hole in right here and one right here on both sides. And then what I could do is I could take some of these store-bought wooden doweling like so, and I could insert those in there and cut them off. I got to pay attention. There's going to be a little bit of an arc here, but that's not what I'm going to do. I got a story for you. Let's check this out. Here's a book written by George Mitchell. Mississippi Hill Country Blues, 1967. That's Mississippi Joe Calcutt playing an old Harmony. I got a couple of these around. In fact, you're going to figure out here that this old thing that I've been showing you in the last couple of things, this busted up one, is exactly that model, down to the stripes and everything, which may have something to do with why I bought it, but I got a few of these. Anyway, George Mitchell was looking for all these people, and he was especially looking for Fred McDowell. Well, he found Fred McDowell by asking the gas station attendant at the Stuckey's in Como, Mississippi, cultural capital of the world, if he knew where Fred McDowell was. Well, it turns out the guy at the gas station being attendant was Fred McDowell. And so I got this book, and there's a picture of Fred McDowell that George took on that trip. Now, I got a nice letter from George when I got this. And recant a fellow Mississippi Hill Country blues lover. The musicians there were so welcoming and enthusiastic. I wish you could have been there with me to experience it. Best wishes, George Mitchell. Thank you, George. Find out who George Mitchell is, would you? There's a bunch of recordings done, and if you get Fred McDowell and find Bulldog Blues that was sung by Eli Green, you'll understand what the Eli Green Hoodoo Voodoo beat on the fifth string of all my guitars is. Anyway, you see what this says? It says Fred 67, and inside here, believe it or not, are a bunch of twigs and sticks from a tree at that Como, Mississippi Stuckey's, and there's all different kind of sizes and whatever. So believe this or not, but what we are going to do is we're going to cut some dowels out of this wood, and we're going to put those in there, and it'll have some mojo to go with this 61 highway. Now it's starting to make sense, isn't it? So let me get this guitar out of the way. And I'm going to show you a couple cool tricks about how to create a bunch of work instead of using store-bought doweling. Now, yeah, I'm going to get so excited here that I'm going to lose what I'm doing. And I don't want those parts to be separated from each other, but have you ever seen one of these? These are pretty cool. They're kind of heavy, but they're an angle vise, and you can pull them up and set them at an angle like this, or anywhere in between, whatever you want to do. So, you take a twig that's about the right size, like this, okay? And then you take it to a belt sander and you taper the end of it like so. You see that? See how that's tapered? And then we're going to turn this around and we're going to put this in here where it's sticking up at me like that. See that? Well, didn't like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill with a 1/4-inch plug cutter. See that? I'm going to make sure the drill is running backwards. Okay? And I am going to make sure that I got a good angle on this, but I'm going to put this over that tapered end. I'm going to run the drill, and you're going to watch this get turned into a 1/4 inch plug. Watch and see. Would you have ever guessed that to be the case? So, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave a little bit of that, and when I cut this off right here, my little flat cut saw, then you will find that I have a 1/4 inch bit that will drill the hole that the plug will fit in. I try it here, and look at that, it fits right in. So there will be some Mojo wood out of the Stuckies in Como, Mississippi in this guitar. Now see, I left that one there. I just need 4 of them. All right, we got a little palette knife here. It's going to be good. We're going to put a little bit of this glue on both sides, like so, and then run that in there, like so. This glue doesn't like it that it's winter much, but oh well. Again, we're just going to pour some glue down in there. I don't want to break this off or mar up this beautiful headstock that we got going on. Get my damp cloth, push that in there. I think we might flip it over. You know what, I'm going to pop this camera up a little bit so you can see how it falls over. Here, there we go. Got that camera popped up. The back side over here is opening up better. Can we still see it? Yeah, there we go. Grandma Spit game. Remember how she used to like fix your hair in church? Yeah. Same thing works here. Good. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's clamp this up. We'll get a heavy clamp right here. I'm going to get that in place. And then I want to take one of these clamps here and make sure that this is level. There we go. And we'll put one of these smaller clamps pulling everything in up at the end. There we go. Okay, I have pinned on a tail piece here. We got some work to do on where the strap button was and where the new one is going to be. And I put a piece of tape on here. You don't want this bashing onto this beautiful finish. And now we're back on the fretboard. It's going to be time for strings pretty soon. So I'm going to take the nurse ratchet ruler and make sure that everything is good here and see if I've got any obvious gaps. Not too bad. A little something going on here, but I have marked everything up with blue magic marker by just taking where that felt tip meets the plastic housing and holding it up. You don't want to drag your sleeves across where you've already been, but at the same time you don't want to mark up the fingerboard. On this one it wouldn't matter so much, but on a nice guitar it certainly would. I want to make sure that everything is there. And now, through the miracle of adhesive sandpaper and a piece of wood, I can just simply run this on here up and down. And I can see where my high spots are. And that one right there is a problem. The rest of them are kind of looking okay. So I'm going to go to work on that one with a little bit heavier tool. I have a number of things I can choose from. And I think we've covered that in other episodes. I got a fret rocker, I got a file, the crowning file. The main thing is to get this one down a little bit. I may even hit it with a hammer one more time and make sure there's not a groove there, but we're looking pretty good. All right, we've got some tape on the top where we put those plugs in to pin the cracked headstock back together. And the whole idea is these flush cut saws aren't always flush cut. I've learned a hard lesson that way. And so you want a piece of tape here that will keep the edge of that saw above the surface of the wood. That way you don't mar it up. There we go. Yeah, perfect. So now I'm going to take a reamer and I'm going to figure out if these holes for the tuners I'm going to put in are okay, because we're going to have to put some escutcheons in here too. Okay, these escutcheons are just a tad bigger than what this neck was, so we're going to take this reamer, 3, 4, 5. Now when you're using a reamer, always go backwards because it compresses the wood and turns the grain back, believe it or not. If you don't do that, then whatever's on it thinks that it's still being cut by the reamer. So enjoy the time you have to relax here. Remember, driving these in is going to do nothing for you but crack the headstock because everything is on the grain pattern here. See that? There we go. 2 more. 1, 2, and then the back twist. There we go. Bingo. All right, guys, before I put these other escutcheons in, I am going to see what I can do about how dirty this is. And we're going to do the magical secret cleaner that looks like it's got oil in it because it's kind of like salad dressing, but it isn't. But it's a perfect cleaner, even though you have to agitate it quite a bit. And you can tell when it's done because it squeaks. And this stuff will clean up and it will not take off this goofy. Look at that. How dirty was that? Okay. And it's got something in it that makes it seem like it wants to dry out pretty quick. So I think you got two of the ingredients. It's wet, but it dries out pretty quick. And it doesn't want to mix with itself very well. See if you can figure it out. Now, look at all that. Yeah. So, we're going to let that get itself drying by itself pretty much. Then, I am going to, that's right, get out the French polish, because once everything is in the way, I'm not going to be able to get to do that. And what do you know? I have that right here because it's in my little French polish getting thing. Here we go. Oh yeah. Oh, now all of a sudden it dried up real quick. Remember, we don't stop here. We just keep putting it on. All right, we're getting close to flipping this over, so we're going to keep putting coats of French polish on this thing as long as we can, because it stuff vapors off pretty quick. It's going to be shiny like the rest of the body, equally tore up but shiny nonetheless. The trick to it is to keep it moving. Oh hey, while we're here, Tam had this on her workstation. Whenever you pull frets, doing a fret job, you pull this off and the tang will always pull up some stuff. So she used to sit there, had a piece of wood on it with a piece of sandpaper on the bottom. She could put her finger and thumb in the hole and keep everything level. So when the frets came out, she would just take this across here like so and knock off any of them chips that the tangs pulled up, and then we'd fix them or do whatever. But Tam was very diligent. Another nice thing about Tam's block of wood is it only had fine sandpaper on one side, so if you had a nut that was a little dirty or something, you could just take it across there like so and then lay it flat because there's no sandpaper there, and just make everything nice and clean, and maybe even get that beveled slope off the back of the nut back in shape. Okay, I want to show you another little trick here. Taking pieces of tape and putting them on either side of the holes where the tuning pegs are going to go. And I want just a little thin layer or something here, because what's next is I am going to take a piece of store-bought doweling and dip it in some glue and push it in to these old screw holes for the tuner pegs, get them in there nice and snug. Then I am going to take a saw and cut that off, and that's why that tape is there. Again, that tape is going to stop the teeth of the saw from cutting in to the headstock. You see that? A nick in the tape is way better than one in the wood. get in the habit of treating these junky guitars like they're something you'll be ready when it's time for a nice one. They're all nice, it just depends on how much money you had in your wallet in 1942, right? Okay guys, little common sense stuff for you. I'm going to drill the holes for the screws for the new tuning machines, and I'll put a piece of tape on here because I don't want to be drilling through the headstock and have holes on the other side. So I'm going to make sure that this flapper tape, when it starts hitting the top of that tuner, we know that we're about right there, and that's going to be good enough. And of course I got chick flick teal screws ready to rock and roll, brother. Alright, I think I forgot to turn on the camera for a little bit here because I got a little bit ahead of myself. What we got here? It is Open D. Why do I use Open D? Well, first off, this thing has been through so much back off, neck lining up, back crack, back being put back on, top crack, neck off. This thing was tore up from the floor up when I got it, and now it has been forced back into, well, if you had a marriage that resulted in a terrible mess, everything wrong, family in pieces, and then all of a sudden you decide, let's give it one more try, honey. Yeah, that is this guitar, people. That is this guitar. So, what do I have to do yet? Well, I have to do some fret work because the ends of the frets are sticking out. And I got to do some, there's a piece up here that's sticking out when you slide down it. I don't like the way this binding looks new versus this old herringbone stuff, which was the only reason that I found this guitar redeeming. The good news is it's been back together long enough for me to understand that the neck is not going to move, nothing is going to crack, so we're going to do the final stuff on it. And I think you learned a lot about the same thing over and over, and I did it that many times, so I wouldn't do it wrong again. So it's time for me. You know what? You know what I heard? I heard that the Zebulon on February, end of February somewhere, not only is Bob Log the third going to be playing there, but Restaurant too. You cannot beat that combination. I should take this down and have Troy Murrah see if he can Detroit this thing, because it is nasty. Success.